The billionaire sheikh's gaze was as cold and unyielding as the desert night that cloaked his vast palace. Yet beneath that steel veil, something stirred. A restless flame tethered to the fragile silhouette flickering in the city's shadows. Every move she made rippled through his mind, a puzzle he could not release, a secret he was desperate to uncover. Beyond the towering ivory walls of his opulent residence, silks whispered against gold in the grand chambers, and the scent of rare incense, sandalwood spiced with amber and frankincense, hung thick in the warm air. Outside, the desert sprawled endlessly, ancient sands shifting beneath a sky heavy with stars, silent witnesses to a world divided into kingdoms of wealth and want. Several streets away, beneath the flickering light of a solitary lantern, she knelt amidst a littered alley. Garbage sacks crumpled beneath her nimble fingers, their coarse texture transforming under her touch into delicate folds and flowing curves. Her eyes burned with a fierce determination, the harsh lines of hunger softened by the spark of unyielding hope. She was a poor girl, laughed at, overlooked, yet artist in her own right, turning refuse into radiance, casting discarded trash into a gown that shimmered against the dirt like a hidden treasure. Unseen, a pair of eyes traced her silhouette from the palace's highest tower, the billionaire sheikh cloaked in shadow. His fingers clenched lightly on the marble balustrade, heart quickening as fascination curdled alongside his emptiness. To the world, he wielded power like a sword. To himself, he was a prisoner of opulence and expectation. But here, watching her create beauty from decay, something irrepressible crept into his chest, as inexplicable as the desert winds. This silent observation grew into obsession. Yet she remained oblivious, unaware of the magnitude of his gaze, of the gulf separating their realities. Night after night, he returned to this ritual, each glimpse binding him tighter to the fragile tapestry she wove with shredded plastic and dreams. Then, on a night heavy with the scent of jasmine and distant thunder, the fragile balance fractured. A sudden breeze caught the corner of her makeshift gown, tugging it loose, a flash of movement so small, so human, and suddenly his cloaked figure shifted in response, a choice forming like lightning in his mind. Should he remain a shadow, a distant watcher, or step into the light of her world? It was in that suspended moment, as the gown slipped and her breath caught, that the billionaire sheikh noticed something else, the glimmer behind her eyes. Not just fire, but a secret, veiled, profound, trembling beneath the surface of all she showed the world. A secret that promised to unravel his understanding of fate, power, and perhaps even himself. The truth she guarded was far greater than any dress made from trash, and it threatened to rewrite the rules of their divided lives. Before the next secret of this vast emirate unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. So many destinies will still be woven, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already captivated you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, And what twist do you think awaits? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to continue. Thank you for being with us. The night breeze stirred again, carrying the sharp scent of jasmine mingled with dust, a reminder that the desert held its secrets close. Much like the billionaire Sheikh himself, his gaze did not waver from the fragile silhouette that stood beneath the flickering lantern, her hands continuing their delicate dance with discarded remnants of a forgotten world. Every motion she made was a whisper to his restless heart, yet the mystery that shrouded her ran deeper than a mere fascination, born of loneliness. He had watched her for nights on end, trapped behind marble and silk, a silent guardian caught between the opulence of his palace and the grit of the streets below. To his world, she was an enigma, an artist casting beauty from decay, while the world around her barely acknowledged her existence. To her, he was but a shadow on the heights, an unknown presence whose heavy silence filled the spaces where dreams should breathe. Tonight, the brittle tendrils of silk slipped from her slender frame one final time, catching the moonlight in a fragile shimmer. The wind, sharp and sudden, tugged at the gown that had become her masterpiece, and she gasped, half in surprise, half in panic. Her hands scrambled to gather the loose ends, cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. It was a moment of vulnerability, a crack in the facade she worked so hard to maintain. The Sheikh's breath caught. Unseen, he stepped back from the balustrade, conflicted. The unrelenting frost in his eyes melted. Just a fraction, as concern crept in, unexpected and unwelcome. He knew the rules, the distance that wealth and power demanded, the chasm between his world of marble halls and hers of shadows and grit. Yet that tremor, the human break in cold perfection, awakened something primal, something that had long been buried beneath the weight of expectations and shattered promises. Before he could retreat into control, a soft voice, barely audible over the nocturnal symphony of the city, broke through. "It's useless," she whispered to herself, frustration edging her words. "They see only the refuse, never the story beneath." Her head lifted slightly, eyes scanning the darkened alley. But one day they'll see. They have to. That declaration struck a chord deep within him. He wondered what ghosts haunted her past, what burdens shaped the fierce light in her amber eyes. Was she simply a survivor? Or was there a deeper truth veiled behind the tattered gown and scavenged dreams? His mind flashed to the cold grandeur of the audience hall, where courtiers whispered and expected obedience like prayers. In his world, secrets were weapons, and alliances were forged with smiles sharper than daggers. But this woman, born of dust and defiance, wielded a power he could not name, one forged from raw authenticity, untouched by gold or silk. The days that followed were testaments to his growing obsession. He summoned confidants and strategists, though none could offer an explanation for his distraction. Ministers spoke of trade routes and alliances, but his thoughts wandered back to the girl who turned trash into treasure. He found himself ordering subtle investigations. Who was she? From which dark corner of the city did she emerge? What story did she carry beneath the threadbare elegance? But the truth was elusive. One evening, beneath the glow of 1,000 lanterns lining the palace gardens, he caught her gaze, not as a distant shadow, but beneath the same sky. That night, emboldened by a sudden tempest inside him, he descended from his tower, stepping into the cool embrace of the star-studded night. She startled, the raw vulnerability in her stance unmistakable. Who? Her voice was cautious, wary, as if expecting judgment or cruelty. He offered no answer. Instead, he reached out, hesitantly, and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. The touch was light, but charged, an unspoken apology, a silent plea. "You create beauty where others see only waste," he murmured, voice low and rough. "Why?" Her eyes flickered, reflecting a storm of pain and pride. "Because even discarded things can be made whole again. Sometimes the only way to survive is to reinvent what was broken." The Sheikh's breath hitched. These words echoed secrets he had buried, painful mistakes that had fractured him long ago. Here was a woman, as fierce as the desert sun, and as tender as the rose blooming in the dust, teaching him a lesson in redemption without words. Yet the gulf between them yawned wide. She was born from hardship and shadows, while he was a prisoner of silver chains and endless demands. How could two worlds so fractured ever merge? Days later, whispers stirred within the palace walls. A rival sheikh, jealous of the billionaire sheikh's power, sought to exploit the unknown woman's past, threatening to unveil secrets that could unravel everything. The seedlings of court intrigue took root, twisting the delicate balance this strange connection had begun to build. Meanwhile, she wrestled with her secret, a truth shielded beneath layers of silent suffering. A whispered name that, if revealed, could destroy not only her fragile dream, but the empire the Sheikh ruled. Was her past a curse or a key? One night, under the silver gaze of a full moon, the Sheikh found her at the edge of the desert, the city's hustle melting into the quiet expanse of sand and stars. Her figure, framed by a cloak of shadow, trembled as the wind kissed her skin. "I am not who you think I am," she confessed, voice barely a breath. "If you knew, would you still watch from above, or would you step away forever?" He stepped forward, the vast emptiness of the desert around them, mirroring the void inside his heart. The power he wielded was meaningless without understanding. In that moment, the Sheikh faced a choice harder than any battle he had fought: to embrace the vulnerability before him, or retreat into the fortress his title demanded. Her secrets, woven beneath layers of silence, threatened to crash into his world like a desert storm, wild, unstoppable, and unforgiving. And as the night deepened, so did the chasm between who they were and who they could become. A sudden figure emerged from the dunes, someone whose presence shattered the fragile stillness, bearing news that would ignite a firestorm neither could ignore. The eternity of the desert stretched cold and vast as the Sheikh's heart clenched tight around a truth, yet unrevealed. The edges of their carefully crafted worlds began to unravel, and no one, Not even the billionaire sheikh could escape the shadow of the secrets waiting to rise. The night air clung heavy with anticipation as the billionaire sheikh stood at the edge of the garden, the fragrance of jasmine wrapping around him like a silk cloak. The stars above flickered in silent witness, bearing down on the collision of two worlds that could never seem to find easy harmony. Her voice lingered in the cool breeze, fragile, yet unyielding. "I am not who you think I am." The words trembled in the shadows between them, aching with untold truths. He stepped closer, the sharp crunch of gravel beneath his boots barely audible over the pounding of his heart. The cloying weight of his wealth felt suddenly irrelevant. No golden halls or whispered politics could shield him from what she held inside. "I want to know," he said quietly, cutting through the distance that had grown between their souls. "Whatever you hide, whatever you fear, it need not stand between us." Her eyes glinted like molten amber, guarded yet overflowing with a vulnerability he had not expected. For a breath, the desert night seemed to hold its silence, just for them. Two strangers, bound by secrets, by longing, by a fate neither dared fully claim. Then, as if summoned by their fragile connection, footsteps shattered the stillness. Out of the velvet darkness emerged a figure, one neither expected, cloaked in authority and menace. A rival sheikh, his presence radiating cold ambition and danger. The billionaire sheikh's jaw tightened. This was no ordinary visitor. The whispered rumors plaguing the palace halls converged momentarily into flesh and blood before him, a harbinger of upheaval, threatening to unravel everything. The rival's gaze didn't waver from the woman standing beside the billionaire sheikh. "So, this is the girl," he sneered, voice laced with derision. "The one who dares mask her past with tattered gowns and lies." She stiffened, the echo of his scorn stabbing sharply. But his eyes, sharp and calculating, veered toward the sheikh. "You play with fire, friend. This secret you pretend may consume your empire before dawn." The billionaire sheikh's grip on control flickered, not from fear, but from a tempest stirring behind his impassive facade. "Speak clearly," he demanded, voice low, dangerous. "The truth is not so easily hidden," the rival said, stepping closer. "Those shadows that cloak your mysterious companion are thicker than you realize, and they stretch into the very heart of your reign." Silence stretched taut, broken only by the soft rustle of the palm leaves swaying against the starlit sky. The woman's breath hitched, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down with unbearable force. Her secret was no longer safe. The sheikh's mind raced, a storm of possibilities crashing against the walls of his reason. If what this rival claimed was true, then the delicate tether binding him to her threatened to snap, plunging them both into ruin. Yet, beneath the cold calculation, a fierce protectiveness flared. This woman, the one who turned refuse into beauty, who challenged him to see beyond marble and gold, had awakened in him a hunger to defy every expectation, every rule. He squared his shoulders, the desert wind teasing strands of ebony hair across his stormy visage. "If your intention is to destroy, then you shall soon learn that I am not so easily broken." Turning to her, he saw the transformation, the shift from fragile artist to a warrior guarding her truth with every fiber of her being. Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding, burning with a promise that refused to be silenced. Together, they stood against the encroaching darkness, two worlds poised on the brink of a storm neither could escape. As the rival spoke once more, his voice dipped into a colder shade. "Beware the past, Sheikh. It does not forget, and it will come for you both when the desert winds change." The night seemed to tighten around them, the stars blinking out one by one, as if to shield them from a fate too brutal to witness. In the hush that followed, the woman reached out, her fingers brushing the cold metal of the Sheikh's ring. A simple touch, yet charged with unspoken vows and defiance. It was a bond forged not in ease, but in the fierce fire of shared survival. For a moment, the world fell away. The rival, the palace, the sprawling sands of the desert, all reduced to a whisper beneath the roar of a gathering tempest. And then, a sharp cry shattered the fragile calm. From the depths of the desert darkness, a messenger appeared, breathless, eyes wild with dread. "The caravan," he gasped, voice cracking like dry earth. "It's been attacked, pillaged. They've taken everything. The precious cargo missing." The Sheikh's gaze snapped to the horizon, where the desert swallowed every promise and threat. Alike, his body tensed, muscles coiling like a panther poised to strike. The war was no longer whispered in shadows. It had arrived, raw and unstoppable. Her secret trembled on the edge of ruin, and with it, the fragile alliance between two broken souls facing a world determined to tear them apart. Dawn was still hours away, but already the desert was alive with whispers and winds that carried the scent of betrayal. And as the first star blinked out, the billionaire sheikh knew nothing would ever be the same again. The messenger's words lingered in the chill night air, thick with dread and the scent of crushed desert sage. The caravan, pillaged, lost, shattered, was more than just a cluster of wagons ravaged in the sand. It was the fragile thread connecting their fates, now frayed and dangling above an abyss. The billionaire sheikh's dark eyes narrowed, the enormity of the threat pressing against his chest like the suffocating weight of his own golden crown. Beside him, she stood motionless at the desert's edge, the faint moonlight tracing the curve of her jaw, the wild cascade of her hair dampened by the night's breeze. Her amber eyes, fierce and unreadable, met his. In that clash of glances lay a silent vow, defiance etched into every line of her fragile silhouette. "We can't allow this chaos to unravel everything," the sheikh said, his voice low, steady, but trembling with the undercurrent of stormy resolve. She glanced out toward the horizon, where the stars seemed to blur with the shifting sands. "My past, it isn't just a secret anymore. It's a weapon." The dry wind whipped against her cloak, revealing a slender hand clenched tight, a fist guarding not only the truth, but the fragility beneath her defiant surface. The desert, endless and unforgiving, pressed against them with the gnawing certainty that nothing was as stable as it seemed. He stepped closer, bridging the fragile distance, the scent of cedarwood mingling with jasmine, a tangible tension wrapping around them like an unspoken promise. "Tell me, if there's any hope, if there's any chance to protect what we've built, I need to know everything." her breath hitched, shadowed by memories that grasped at her like angry ghosts. I come from a place swallowed by secrets and betrayal, a place where loyalty was just another lie dressed in silk. The kingdom where I was born is not far from here, yet it might as well be a lifetime away. His heart clenched, a reflection of the weight his own past bore. Why hide it? Are you afraid? She swallowed hard, eyes flickering with a storm of pride and shattered trust. Because the moment you learn the truth, either you'll turn away or your enemies will use it to destroy us both. The sound of shifting sand behind them interrupted their fragile moment. Both turned sharply, hands instinctively moving toward their weapons, or at least the promise of protection in a world that demanded readiness. From the shadows came the rival Sheikh, his dark silhouette carved sharp against the moon's glow. His cold laughter cut through the silence like a blade. So the beloved mystery unravels at last. A princess in exile? His tone dripped with mockery, venom dripping from every carefully chosen word. The billionaire. Sheikh's jaw hardened, the familiar fire of rivalry flashing in his eyes. Speak carefully. Your threats mean nothing to me. But the rival's gaze lingered on the woman with a predator's calculation, a cruel smile curving his lips. You carry more than just secrets, girl. There are debts unpaid, blood spilled, shadows that stretch deeper than the desert's endless night. She stepped forward, chest aching with the burden of exposed scars. A silent warrior, standing tall amidst whispered dangers. I am not your pawn to sacrifice. The rival's smirk faltered for a heartbeat, awareness flickering in his eyes. Perhaps not. Yet your silence has already brought storms to these lands. I wonder, will your revelation be the key to salvation, or the spark that sets everything ablaze? A sudden gust scattered the sands, erasing footprints and intentions alike. The desert seemed to hold its breath, the fragile balance tipping toward chaos. The billionaire Sheikh's voice sliced through the mounting tension, cold and resolute. I will protect her, and whatever comes, our enemies will learn that power is not only held in wealth or steel. It is in loyalty and the courage to face the truth. Her eyes met his once again, a flicker of warmth piercing the shadowed fortress he had built around his heart. For a fleeting moment, the gulf between their worlds seemed to narrow, bridged by unspoken understanding and fierce determination. But the rival Sheikh laughed again, darker this time, his footsteps weaving closer through the restless night. Then prepare yourselves. The storm is coming, and even the strongest palaces can crumble beneath the desert winds. As the rival vanished into the night, the two stood alone, an alliance born of fragile trust against the encroaching tempest. Silence fell heavy. The desert whispered secrets in the language of shifting dunes, foretelling betrayals. The weight of future battles settled like dusk upon them, heavy and inevitable. A sudden movement caught the Sheikh's attention. In the distance, a faint light flickered, like a beacon or a warning. His fingers clenched instinctively, the pulse in his veins quickening. This is more than a fight over lost cargo, he murmured, voice rough with unease. It's a war for survival. She nodded, resolve sharpening her gaze. And every secret we bury only feeds the fire waiting to consume us. The moon dipped low, a dying ember in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched like hands reaching for them. His hand found hers, hesitant yet fierce, a lifeline in the gathering darkness. Together, he vowed, no matter what lies ahead. Her grip tightened, a silent promise that she would stand by him, even as the desert's unforgiving horizon threatened to swallow them whole. But as the first call to prayer echoed faintly across the vast dunes, a new figure emerged, cloaked in black, eyes blazing with urgency. The calm they clung to shattered. "The Emir's envoy," she whispered, dread coiling like a serpent in her chest. The sheikh stepped forward, his gaze piercing the relentless night. The envoy's voice trembled, barely audible over the wind. "Your Highness, the truth you seek has been uncovered." A heavy silence fell. The desert held its breath, and between the silent stars and the cold sand, the fragile fortress of their defiant love stood on the brink. Because some secrets are not meant to stay hidden, and some truths will burn brighter than the fiercest desert storm. The desert night had thickened, pressing its weight upon the palace walls and the narrowed streets alike, as if the very air was charged with a storm waiting to break. The messenger's words echoed relentlessly in the billionaire Sheikh's mind, though the jagged silence he now faced felt heavier than any threat. The caravan's ruin was no mere attack. It was a declaration, a challenge thrown against everything he guarded, not just wealth, but trust, hope, and a fragile alliance forged beneath stars and shadows. Beside him, her presence was a steady flame in the encroaching darkness. Her eyes, pools of molten amber, seemed to carry the desert's ancient sorrow and resilience in equal measure. The secret was no longer just hers. It had tangled itself in the Sheikh's fate, binding them with invisible threads pulled taut by danger and desire. "You must tell me everything," he urged softly, the harsh desert wind dimming to a whisper as though eavesdropping on their fragile moment. Secrets do not stay buried when enemies seek to wield them as weapons. Her breath sharpened, caught between fear and fierce determination. "My past is a labyrinth of shadows, betrayal, blood debts, exiles. I tried to shield you and your empire from its storm, but the tempest is already here." She turned her gaze toward the desert horizon, where black dunes merged with the inked sky. That caravan carried more than goods. It held the remnants of my lineage, the last ties to a kingdom that wants me dead. They will stop at nothing to claim what remains. His chest tightened. A surge of protectiveness overtook the calculated coldness he usually summoned at crises. "Then we face this storm together. No secret, no enemy will stand between us." Her fingers brushed against the smooth metal of his ring. A silent pact ignited in the night air. Yet, even as their hands met, a shadow, darker than the desert night, crept closer. The rustling sand warned of an approaching presence. The rival sheikh emerged, his silhouette cutting a vicious line against the moonlight. His mocking smile spread like poison. "So the darling mystery reveals herself at last," he sneered. "Not just a scavenger cloaked in broken finery, but a hunted princess disguised in exile. Aggression sparked behind the billionaire Sheikh's calm veneer. "Speak your threat plainly. I am no stranger to war." The rival's eyes gleamed, sharp as a dagger's edge. "War has already come, friend. Your precious ally carries chains forged long before you crossed her path. Betrayals that could shatter your reign if pulled loose." The woman squared herself, her voice steady and unbowed. "I am no pawn for your schemes." "Perhaps." The rival's gaze lingered with cruel calculation. "But your silence has already invited ruin. Will your truth be salvation, or the spark that consumes you all?" The wind whipped fiercely, as if the desert itself despised the threats spoken under its watch. The vast expanse of sand seemed to close around them, a cage tightening with every heartbeat. The billionaire Sheikh's voice dropped low, suffused with steel and an unyielding promise. "I swear by the blood of my ancestors, she will stand, protected. Let those who dare come remember. Power is nothing without loyalty and the courage to confront the darkest truths." Their eyes met, a blazing defiance passing between them. Two warriors bound by the imminence of ruin and the fragile hope of redemption. But the rival sheikh only laughed. His voice, a shadow that lingered after his fading figure, disappeared into the night. "Prepare yourselves. When the desert winds shift, even the mightiest palaces fall." The night reclaimed its silence, thick and watchful. A sudden spark flickered in the distance, a lone lantern's glow wavering like a heartbeat. The sheikh's gaze sharpened, every muscle coiling for a fight that was already unfolding beyond sight. "This is more than a battle for lost goods," he muttered, voice roughened by tension. "This is war for survival itself." Her resolve solidified beside him, eyes ablaze, and every secret kept feeds the tinder waiting to ignite the lands we hold dear. The moon began its slow descent, pulling shadows longer, deeper, hands reaching into the heart of their fragile alliance. His hand found hers, hesitant yet fierce, a lifeline against the rising tempest. "Together," he vowed, "we will face whatever storms come. Nothing will break us." A new sound shattered the fragile calm, a hurried approach heralded by frantic steps. From the swirling darkness emerged another figure, cloaked not in silk but in urgency. The envoy of the emir, eyes wide with horrors yet unspoken. "The emir commands your presence," she whispered, voice cracked by dread. "The truth you've sought has been uncovered." A hush fell over the desert, the stars blinking out as if shielding themselves from the impending revelation. The billionaire sheikh stiffened, the weight of unseen chains slipping noiselessly around his fate. In that silent breath, between sand and sky, between secrecy and exposure, destiny trembled. Because in the endless desert, where night masks all things, some truths cannot remain buried, and some secrets will prove far more devastating than any storm the sands have ever known. The pale light of dawn had barely begun to touch the horizon when the envoy's words still echoed like a death knell in the vast, silent desert that sprawled beyond the palace walls. The truth, the hunted secret she carried, was no longer a whisper among shadows, but a storm waiting to break loose. The billionaire sheikh stood motionless, his silhouette framed by the opulence surrounding him, yet his mind raced along the precarious edge between control and chaos. The weight of his crown felt suddenly heavier, the burden of his lineage entwined with the fragile woman whose very existence challenged the order he had known. Her hand trembled slightly in his, the faint touch carrying the tremors of 100 fears she could not voice. Her amber eyes, so fierce, yet so vulnerable, locked onto his with a desperate honesty. "You need to know," she whispered, her voice barely more than the rustle of silk against marble. "The blood that stains my past, the enemies I cannot outrun. If the emir has learned, then the kingdom I'd fled from is ready to burn bridges and bodies to retrieve what they lost." He took a slow, measured breath, feeling the scent of jasmine and cedarwood mingle around them, a fragile invitation to hope amid the gathering storm. But the desert wind was cruel and unrelenting. It carried not only scents, but threats. "Tell me," he urged, his voice low and demanding. "Everything. If this secret is the key to their reckoning, then you and I must be ready, together." Her gaze flickered toward the dunes that seemed to ripple endlessly in the distance. "My family was betrayed, torn apart by those who wore crowns like thorns. I survived only because I became what they never expected, a ghost in the palace. Unseen but dangerous." Her words hung in the air, a tapestry woven from pain, fear, and bitter resolve. The contrast of the opulent garden, silken cushions, fountains whispering faint melodies, with the desolation of her tale was profound. Yet in that contrast lived the fragile, burning truth of their intertwined fates. Before he could answer, a shadow detached itself from the gathering darkness, the rival sheikh, his eyes glinting with malevolence. His presence was a razor's edge, cutting through the fragile peace. "So," the rival sneered, voice dripping with scorn, "the mystery is not just a beggar playing dress-up, but a royal thorn buried in your side. Do you understand the danger you harbor, friend? This princess in exile carries wounds that bleed on pages you've yet to read." The billionaire sheikh's jaw clenched, a storm rising behind his once icy gaze. "If she is a weapon, then I wield it. My empire will not fall to whispers and shadows." The rival's smile curled, cold and cruel. "Empires fall to what they cannot see coming. And your dear ally, she is both your salvation and your undoing." The woman stepped forward, the firmness in her stance like a blade forged in deserts and sorrow. "I am no one's pawn to be sacrificed." "Perhaps," the rival said, eyes glittering with venom. "But pawn or queen, your past bites with fangs sharp enough to sever loyalties and lives." The air thickened with tension, thin as the fine gold threads adorning the sheikh's robe. The desert, usually mute and vast, seemed to close around them, listening as hearts raced. The sheikh's voice dropped to a whisper, rich with steel. "I will stand between her and ruin. No blade will touch what I protect." The rival laughed darkly, retreating into the night's depths. "Prepare yourself, Sheikh. When the desert winds turn, even palaces crumble." Silence reclaimed the garden. The Sheikh's gaze shifted back to the woman. This war is no longer distant intrigue. It is at our doorstep. Her grip tightened around his fingers, resolve igniting behind those glowing eyes. If our secrets are sparks, then we must be the fire that burns brighter. A sudden flicker of torchlight danced along the distant horizon, like a herald of chaos inching closer. Behind them, the palace stirred with the restless whispers of courtiers and spies. The walls, polished and cold, held their own secrets. In these corridors of power, every smile was a mask, every alliance a gamble. She looked up at him, the weight of her burden etched across delicate features and yet unyielding like steel tempered by flame. "There's more you must know," she breathed, voice barely steady. "The caravan was only the beginning. The trail leads back to the very throne you guard. My enemies have allies in your courts, silent knives, waiting to strike long before battle begins." His heart tightened, the isolation of his rule suddenly apparent in a world of shifting blades and whispered betrayals. He pulled her closer, beneath the tapestry of stars now fading into twilight. His breath brushed her temple, a silent vow. "We face this storm united. No secret, no shadow can break us." For a fleeting moment, the fractured gulf between their worlds narrowed into a fragile bridge, shimmering with hope and dread intertwined. Then, from the gathering mists of dawn, a new presence stepped forward, an emissary cloaked in the scars of war and the urgency of whispered counsel. "Your Highness," the voice was urgent but measured. "The Emir's counsel demands your immediate audience. The truth you seek is no longer a secret held by sands, but a dagger drawn in the palace itself." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, the weight of duty and desire colliding. Around them, the desert held its breath, the ancient winds waiting to catch the fallout of the coming tempest. And beneath that weight, the secret she bore, a fragile ember beneath ashes, threatened to blaze anew, consuming all in its path. The horizon blushed a deep crimson. The billionaire Sheikh's hand tightened around hers with a fierce desperation. "We will face whatever comes, together." But as the first ray of sun pierced the darkness, a whispered name slipped from the emissary's lips, one so forbidden and powerful, its meaning shattered the last remnants of their fragile peace. And in that moment, the desert's endless expanse became a prison with no walls. Because some truths scorch the soul, and some secrets will set entire kingdoms aflame. The dawn's first light crept slowly over the horizon, casting a fragile gold upon the marble floors of the vast palace. Inside the tented chamber, where the billionaire Sheikh paced with relentless restlessness, the weight of the night's revelations clung to him like a second skin. The Emir's envoy had delivered news that shattered what little peace he had grasped. Truths unveiled, betrayals lying in wait within his own court. The woman stood near the arched window, watching the desert awaken beyond the gilded walls. Her amber eyes mirrored the turmoil that roiled beneath the surface. The secret that had once remained a whispered shadow between them now loomed larger, threatening to engulf them both. She turned slowly, her voice a frail thread, stretched taut with fear and courage. My enemies do not only hunt from the shadows outside these walls. They have infiltrated every hall, every whisper, she said, her words falling like stones into the still air. The caravan's attack was just the beginning. Their reach extends into your palace. The Sheikh's gaze was unyielding as it fixed on her. The cold authority was still there, but beneath it flickered something warmer. Protection, desperation, a hidden tenderness he refused to expose. Then we root them out, no matter the cost. No secret will remain buried, and no traitor will find sanctuary under my roof. A long silence settled, filled only by the distant call of a morning prayer and the soft rustle of silk drapes stirred by the waking breeze. Both understood the tenuous tightrope they now walked. Trust tangled with suspicion, love shadowed by danger. Her hands trembled, ever so slightly, as she clasped his. "There is one truth I have not told you," she confessed, voice barely above a whisper. "A truth that could shatter everything we're trying to build." He stepped closer, the lines of power and vulnerability blurring between them. "Tell me, whatever it is, we face it together." Her breath caught. "I was once betrothed to the rival Sheikh." Her eyes locked onto his, unblinking. "Not by choice. It was part of the political games played in my homeland. A forced union meant to secure alliances and silence dissent." The Sheikh's jaw tightened, the quiet fury of betrayal stirring within him. "He sought to use you as a pawn," he said darkly. "But you are no one's piece to be traded." She nodded, a fragile smile touching her lips despite the pain. "I fled to escape that life, to forge my own path. But the rival's threats follow me still. His men are everywhere, waiting for the moment I slip." Cold desert air brushed past them as the night's chill surrendered to the harsh light of day. The vastness of the world beyond the palace seemed to mock their vulnerability. Two souls caught between crowns and shadows, power and fear. Suddenly, the heavy silence shattered as footsteps echoed from the tense entrance. A stern-faced advisor, eyes sharp with urgency, approached. "Your Highness, the rival Sheikh's forces are mobilizing at the borders. They are preparing for an assault." The Sheikh's eyes flicked to the woman, a silent exchange of determination, fear, and hope igniting between them. "Then we have no time to waste. Rally the guards. Prepare the defenses." She exhaled, steadying herself. "There's more," she added, voice edged with foreboding. "Among his ranks are those who know my secret, those who want to make me pay the price for my defiance." His fingers closed around hers, firm, unwavering. "No one will harm you under my watch. I vow it." As the palace stirred to life around them, tension braided with resolve, a new danger lurked unseen. The secret she bore was more than a remnant of a past she escaped. It was a key that could dissolve kingdoms and ignite wars. The hours that followed were a blur of movement and whispered strategies. The opulent halls, usually echoing with silks brushing polished stone and faint laughter, now thrummed with the low murmur of plotting and preparation. The weight of impending conflict pressed on every shoulder. In the quiet moments between orders and plans, the Sheikh sought out the woman once more, finding her on the balcony, overlooking the sprawling city below. The scent of sandalwood and rare spices wrapped their fragile bubble in defiance of the storm gathering beyond. He reached out, tracing a delicate line along her cheek, a touch that spoke of promises and the strength found in vulnerability. "We will face the coming tempest together." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears and fierce resolve. Whatever the cost, for love, for survival. But even as they clung to each other, shadows crept closer, and a whisper slipped through the marble corridors, a name spoken in secret by a traitor's tongue. A name that would unravel trust and ignite betrayal from inside the very walls they called home. And as the sun rose higher, burning away the last veils of night, a single message arrived, one that would shatter alliances, expose hidden enemies, and force the billionaire sheikh to confront the unbearable truth that for all his power, some fates were beyond even his control. The letter bore a seal marked with the rival sheikh's emblem, and inside, words that chilled even the fiercest heart. "Your beloved is not who she claims to be. The past you defend harbors a betrayal that will bring your empire to its knees." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still around the sheikh. The rush of desert winds silenced. The golden haze of dawn faded to gray. The fragile fortress of love and trust trembled on the edge of collapse. And in that suspended moment, the billionaire sheikh understood. Trust was not just a billionaire gift given freely, but a battlefield where the fiercest wars were waged, because some secrets have armies waiting beneath them, and some truths once unearthed come drenched in fire. The morning sun struggled to break through the thick veil of tension that hung over the palace like a suffocating shroud. Inside the cool marble halls, the billionaire sheikh moved with purposeful strides, each step echoing his restless mind. The letter, its seal still crisp with the rival sheikh's emblem, weighed heavily in his palm, each word a serrated blade twisting deeper into the fragile fortress he and the woman had tried so desperately to build. Her voice lingered in his memory, fragile, yet fiercely defiant, as she whispered of forced betrothals and shadows that chased her from a kingdom rife with betrayal. The revelation that she had once been promised to the rival sheikh spun a new web of danger around them both. It was a truth that changed everything. He found her standing at the window overlooking the city, her amber eyes reflecting the stark light of a desert dawn. Her silhouette, draped in silks that quivered softly in the morning breeze, seemed both delicate and unyielding, a living contradiction, much like the bond they shared. He stepped silently beside her, feeling the pulse of fear and determination vibrating through the slight tremble of her fingers. "We face your past as one," he said low, his voice both a command and a promise. "No darkness will sever what binds us." Her breath hitched, a fragile war waging behind those guarded eyes. "The rival's men are closing in. They know where to find me, and they carry the power to destroy us both." He turned to face her fully, every inch the sovereign cloaked in authority, yet stripped bare by the vulnerability that only she seemed to awaken. "Then we prepare. We fight with every resource, every sword, every shadow at our command. Outside, the palace stirred. Courtiers clad in brocade whispered politics and war. Their expressions, masks hiding knives, sharpened by jealousy and fear. In this gilded cage, alliances shifted like sand beneath the desert sun, and trust was a currency rarer than gold. Minutes later, the heavy oaken doors swung open, admitting a tide of courtiers and advisors. They piled plans and reports before the sheikh, their voices a swell of urgency and ambition. But he barely heard them. The life that truly mattered stood close, trembling yet resolute. Beneath the shimmering archways, he caught her gaze amid the storm. "You are not a pawn," he vowed, his fingers curling around hers in a grip that steadied them both. "You are the flame that will scorch our enemies." Her jaw tightened, a fierce light igniting behind the storm of doubts. "They won't stop until everything I have built on the ashes of my past burns away." The distant sound of horses' hooves thundered across the courtyard. Guards hastened to their posts. The palace shifting from opulence to fortress with a crackling urgency. The rival sheikh's threat had moved from whispered rumors to an imminent siege. His forces amassed beyond the city borders, a dark tide ready to crash upon their world. As night began its slow ascent, the palace's pulse quickened. Lanterns flickered against silk tapestries, casting dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. The air smelled of spiced incense and nervous anticipation, thick with the weight of looming confrontation. In the private sanctum of the sheikh's chamber, the two souls who had dared to intertwine their fates stood before a window framing the vast desert. The stars, traditionally silent watchers of royal fortunes, blinked with somber regard. The sheikh drew her close, his hand tracing the delicate line of her jaw, a touch electric, raw in the tension between them. "Whatever betrayal waits, we face it as one heart, one will." Her voice was a whisper carried on a breath, fragile as dawn's first light, yet fierce as the desert winds. "I carry the ghosts of a kingdom's betrayal. Every step forward is haunted by shadows I cannot outrun." He let the weight of her confession settle, their breaths synchronized, a fragile rhythm of hope amid despair. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. A messenger stumbled in, dust clinging to his cloak, eyes wide with dread. "Your Highness, the walls have ears, and the enemy's traitors move within." The chamber seemed to shrink, the flickering lantern flame casting long, trembling shadows. The sheikh's eyes narrowed, heart pounding with premonition. "Tell me everything," he commanded. "The caravan's attack was a diversion," the messenger gasped. "Spies within your palace have been feeding the rival. They seek to tear your reign apart from inside." Silence fell like a guillotine, slow and absolute. The woman's hand clenched tighter, nails digging into silk. "It's a war not just of swords, but of secrets," she muttered. "And some betrayals run deeper than blood." The sheikh's gaze hardened, resolve tightening like a steel clasp around his heart. "Then we burn away the rot, no matter the cost." As the night thickened outside, the palace became a crucible of whispered plots and unseen gambits. In the quiet moments between storm and silence, the fragile alliance of two broken souls held firm against the gathering tempest. Yet amidst the flickering shadows, a new presence waited, silent, patient, and deadly, a figure whose arrival would shatter trust and plunge their world into a desperate fight for survival. The Sheikh's breath hitched as the master of secrets slipped from shadow into light. And in that cold gaze, he saw the nightmare pulse at the heart of his empire. The whispered name that followed was like a curse in the desert air, and, with it, the last veil fell from their fragile peace. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. The first light of dawn painted the vast desert sky in soft hues of rose and amber, casting a tender glow over the marble towers of the Billionaire Sheikh's palace. Inside, the air was heavy with both uncertainty and resolve, as if the very walls held their breath for what was to come. Yet amidst the tension, a fragile calm wrapped around the Sheikh and the woman who had upended his world. A calm born of battles fought and of love fiercely won. She stood close beside him, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift from her shoulders. Her amber eyes, once clouded with fear, now shone with a quiet strength, an unyielding flame that had survived storms of betrayal and judgment. Their hands remained clasped, fingers interlacing like the promise of a future forged through shared pain and unbreakable trust. The long night of revelations had bowed before the dawn's gentle certainty. The rival Sheikh's threats, the poisoned whispers in the palace halls, the shadows lurking behind gilded smiles, all had been met with the iron will of a man who knew that power was rarely in gold or armies, but in loyalty and courage. "We face the day with open eyes," the Billionaire Sheikh said, his voice steady yet tender, "because no secret, no foe can erode what we have built between us." Her gaze lifted to meet his, softening with gratitude and love. "I feared my past would be our downfall, but with you, I have found courage too. Stand tall, not as a ghost of my history, but as the woman I choose to be." Together, they moved through the palace corridors, now alive with preparation, not panic. Guards donned their armor with renewed purpose. Whispers turned to words of unity. The courtiers, who once doubted, now watched with a cautious respect, sensing the transformation sparked by this union between power and resilience. Deep in the heart of the palace, the Emir's council convened, but their intrigue was tempered by the undeniable truth. The Sheikh's reign would not crumble under hidden betrayals, for the woman at his side was not just his love, but the fiercest ally he had ever claimed. Her secrets, once weapons aimed at their union, had become shields that fortified their cause. In the sunlit gardens, where rare orchids bloomed, amidst the desert's harsh embrace, the Sheikh and the woman found a fleeting moment of peace. The scent of jasmine mingled with the warmth of the morning, a symbol of new beginnings. She removed the cloak that had hidden her scars, revealing the dress crafted from silks, now pristine, a testament to her journey from shadow to light. He reached out, tracing the delicate line of her jaw with reverent fingers. "This empire My world was empty until you showed me the true meaning of strength and beauty. The emirs who had lingered in the shadows lost their thirst for power against a bond forged in fire and truth. The palace echoed with relief, the storm that had threatened to consume them passing into legend. Not all wounds faded instantly, but the healing had begun. The woman who once scavenged for scraps now walked freely through halls adorned with gold and honor. The billionaire sheikh, once a prisoner of his own expectations, shed the cold armor of indifference to embrace the warmth of belonging. Together, they sat beneath the shade of an ancient palm tree, watching children laugh as they played in the gardens. Children who were no longer figments of a distant dream, but a forthcoming reality. Their hearts beat in steady harmony, a testament to battles won not with swords alone, but with unwavering loyalty and the courage to forgive. The sun climbed higher, spilling golden light over the desert, turning every grain of sand into a spark of hope. The palace, once a fortress of isolation, had become a home of promise and endless tomorrows. In that light, the billionaire sheikh whispered, "No secret is lost if it leads us here, to a future where love reigns above all." Her fingers tightened around his, an unspoken vow reflecting in her eyes. Whatever the sands may carry, we walk this path together, stronger than any storm. And as the day unfurled, the empire beneath the endless sky stood not as a monument to power alone, but as a beacon of redemption, unity, and the enduring truth that even the deepest scars can bloom into a legacy of love.